Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we'll go into the 10th juz. Okay, so the 10th juz, we have Surah Anfal as well as Surah Tawbah in the 10th juz. And Surah Anfal, majority of Surah Anfal, it's related to the Battle of Badr. And reading Surah Anfal, it will most assuredly contextualize the entire Battle of Badr. So I would really suggest that when studying the Battle of Badr, that one reads Surah Anfal completely with translation, and the entire battle of Badr will be contextualized for you. You'll understand it a lot better. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Anfal, verse number 70, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu qul liman fi aydikum min al-asra in ya'lamillahu fi qulubikum khayran yu'tikum khayran mimma ukhidha minkum wa yaghfir lakum wallahu ghafurur rahim. So background a little bit before we get into it. So background is that in the Battle of Badr, one of the participants was Abbas radiallahu anh. And Abbas radiallahu anh was the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was 3 years older than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he had accepted Islam. Or at the least, Islam was something that he was drawn to. So he did support the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Battle of Badr, in the Battle of Badr, when the kuffar, when the polytheists of Makkah, when they were marching towards Makkah, they coerced Abbas radiallahu anh to join, despite him not wanting to join and fight against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his nephew. So now we know what happened in the Battle of Badr. In the Battle of Badr, this was a supreme victory for the Muslims, and the kuffar, the polytheists, they were routed, and 70 of their chieftains, they lost their lives in the Battle of Badr, and 70 were captured. And one of the prisoners of war, right, the POWs, was none other than Abbas radiallahu anh, the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was decided that ransom will be taken from them. Yes, money will be taken from them, and then they will secure their freedom once they have given some money. So they had to buy their freedom. So Abbas radiallahu anh was one such prisoner who had to purchase his freedom. He was a prisoner, and he had to purchase his freedom because this was what was decided. Of course, those who didn't have money and those who were unable to pay, for whatever reason, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam freed them, or if they could read and write, then it was made compulsory upon them to teach 10 kids of Medina how to read and right. So the Prophet ﷺ was a proponent of education as well. Just side point over here. Now about Abbas radiallahu anh. So he was captured, and once he was captured, he goes to the Prophet ﷺ and it says that, Ya Rasulullah, uh, I was coerced. I never wanted to fight against you, and you shouldn't take any ransom from me. So he's pleading his case to the Prophet ﷺ that, look, don't take any ransom from me. I'm a Muslim, and I don't, and I was compelled by the kuffar of Makkah to march to Badr and to fight against you. And even in even in the battle of Badr, I did not really partake in the battle. So upon this, the verses, and again majority of Surah Al-Anfal, it was revealed after the battle of Badr, and according to some mufassirun, it was revealed before the battle of Badr. Either way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, O Prophet of Allah, قل لمن في أيديكم من الأسرى إن يعلم الله في قلوبكم خيرا يؤتكم خيرا مما أخذ منكم ويغفر لكم والله غفور رحيم. That, O Prophet, say to the prisoners of war who are in your hands. So you have these prisoners of war who are in your hands. If Allah knows of any good in their hearts, He shall give you what is better than what has been taken from you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what is in the heart of Abbas radiallahu anh, so far as his iman is concerned. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if Allah knows of any good in your heart, meaning that if you have iman, if you believe in Allah, if you believe in the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you give whatever is being asked of you, so you're giving ransom to free yourself, then Allah is saying He shall give you what is better than what has been taken from you. So now you're in a position where you have to give ransom, you have to secure your freedom, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you that which is better than what is going to be taken from you today. Moreover, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive you, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all forgiving and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mercy giving. So from this, Abbas radiallahu anh, ransom was taken from him. Ransom was taken from Abbas radiallahu anh. And there's an interesting story behind this where when he goes to plead his case, and so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that you have to give this much ransom. So Abbas radiallahu anh says that, I don't have that kind of money. So the Prophet ﷺ disclosed a secret between Abbas radiallahu anh and his wife al-Fadl. That what about, and the background of this is, and this is in Musnad Ahmad, what had happened was that when Abbas radiallahu anh was before marching with the kuffar, before marching with the polytheists of Makkah towards Badr, he told his wife that there's such and such money which is buried in such and such place, and he basically tabulated for his wife that this is how much Fadl bin Abbas is going to receive, this is how much this son is going to receive, this is how much you are going to receive. So there was a huge sum of money. So the Prophet ﷺ, when Abbas radiallahu anh was when he was presented in front of the Prophet of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said that this is how much ransom you have to give, and Abbas radiallahu anh said, I don't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money. So the Prophet ﷺ said that what about that money that you spoke to al-Fadl about? What about that money? So Abbas radiallahu anh was completely shocked, and he was taken aback that this was something that was privy only to myself and my wife. How did the Prophet ﷺ know? No one is there. So he basically, what he did was that he told al-Fadl, his wife, in complete secrecy, in utter secrecy. There was no one there. And he made sure of that there was no one there. So how could the Prophet ﷺ have known? How was it possible that he could know something like this? This was a secret that was just known between husband and wife. And this is when Iman, it is said that this is when Iman truly entered his heart, and he really, and at that moment, he understood with certainty that this was indeed the Prophet of Allah. So, uh, nonetheless, he gave the ransom. He gave the ransom to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he got back more than he gave. He became a very wealthy man, right? By the end of Rasulullah, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed, Hazrat Abbas radiallahu anhu became an extremely wealthy person, and so much so that he would say about this verse, he would say with pride, and he would boast that this verse was revealed about me. The cause of revelation, the sabab of this, of the revelation of this verse, is because of me. So this verse in Surah Anfal, verse number 70, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, O Prophet, say to the prisoners of war, and he say to Abbas radiallahu anh, who are in your hands, if Allah knows of any good in your hearts, meaning that you are claiming that you are a Muslim today, you are claiming that you are a Muslim and that ransom should not be taken from you. But know this, that if Allah knows that this is true in your heart, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does know, He shall give you what is better than what has been taken from you. So today, yes, there is some ransom which is being taken from you, but in the future, Allah will give you back so much more. And not only that, Allah will forgive you. So Abbas radiallahu anh, he became, he would boast at the, because of this verse. He would tell people that this verse was revealed about me. And I wish on that day, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam took more from me, because I got back so much more in return. So he was so happy at this. He would say that I wish Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took more, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me so much. And this was what happened with Abbas radiallahu anh. And this is, there's a lesson in this verse for us, that whatever we give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give back. Whatever we give when it comes to giving charity, donating, being generous, giving to the destitute, giving to the poor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us back in full, in this world and in the hereafter. This is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, look at Abbas radiallahu anh. He's arguing with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I don't have that kind of money. He's kind of coerced to give the money to secure his freedom. He has to give up that amount that he told Fadl, his wife, about. And then towards the end, he became a very wealthy man, so much so that he would say that I wish on that day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took more, because I have so much money today. Because on that day, he gave to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensated him, and compensated him so much so that Abbas radiallahu anh, he would boast that this verse was revealed about me, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me so many times more. So this is one verse that we should keep in mind, that when it is time to give, when it is time to give for the sake of Allah, we should give with an open heart. We should give with an open heart, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will recompense us and give us back in full, inshallah. Another verse which I wanted to explain was verse number 25 from Surah At-Tawbah. لقد نصركم الله في مواطن كثيرة ويوم حنين إذ أعجبتكم كثرتكم فلم تغن عنكم شيئا وضاقت عليكم الأرض بما رحبت ثم وليتم مدبرين. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, and this was during the battle of Hunain. So during the battle of Hunain, this was the first time the Muslims, the Sahaba, they were plentiful and they outnumbered the enemy. This was the first time that the Muslims, they outnumbered the enemy. So they thought that because we're outnumbering the enemy, we are definitely going to win this battle. This is something that's in the bag for us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this and says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has helped you on multiple occasions. وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ, and the help of Allah also reached you on the day of Hunain, when you fought. Now what happened was إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ, that your numbers made you happy. Your numbers made you happy. فَلَمْ تُغْنِ عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ. But your numbers did not aid you. They did not help you. وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ. And what happened was you were routed on that day, on the day of Hunain. You were routed temporarily. So despite the earth being vast, on the day of Hunain, it became constrained. It became constrained. ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ. And you rushed away. You ran away. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in this verse that don't look at your numbers. Don't think that it is your numbers that give you strength. Rather, strength comes from Allah Azza wa Jal. Success comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, this is something that we need to keep in mind. It isn't our numbers, it is the quality of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will send the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will allow us to receive the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it isn't our numbers, rather what it is that we should have yaqeen and conviction upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that victory comes from Allah. Victory comes from Allah. It doesn't come with our numbers. It doesn't come with wealth. It doesn't come with anything but with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Sahaba, reminding the Sahaba that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped you on multiple occasions when you were outnumbered. And even on the day of Hunain, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there. But only after you changed your intention that yes, all scenarios, they are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So on the day of Hunain, what happened was that you marveled at your numbers. You were happy with your numbers, but they didn't aid you in the slightest. And what else happened on that day is that the earth became constrained despite its vastness. And you ran away because they were throwing arrows at them. They were shooting arrows at them, and they didn't know where the arrows were coming from. They were in a valley, and the army of the armies, they had taken up their posts all across the mountains. So they didn't know where the arrows were coming from. They were in the middle. So the Sahaba, they had to retreat. And ultimately the tide of the battle was turned by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding the Sahaba, that victory comes with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not look at your numbers. Do not look at what you have. Do not look at whatever asbab, whatever means of the world you have in your possession. Know that everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 25. Inshallah, we'll stop over here. There is also, let me explain this as well. In Surah At-Tawbah, you also have an important injunction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about zakat. And so zakat is one of the obligations. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks at length about the recipients of zakat, that who exactly are the recipients of zakat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتِ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ, and this is verse number 60 of Surah At-Tawbah, that إنما الصدقات of the 10th juz. So إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. So in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that that zakat is prescribed for you, that إنما الصدقات للفقراء, that the zakat which has been prescribed for you, it's only to be given to the poor, to the indigent, and to those who work on administering it. So let's start. So we have a few categories over here. So the first category is the poor. The second category is the indigent. Now, who are the poor and who are the indigent? The poor are those people who may have something. The poor are those people who may have something, but oftentimes they can't make ends meet. Indigent are those people who have nothing. So these two categories are definitely recipients of zakat. And the third category is وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا, and those who work on administering it. So those who are working towards acquiring zakat. So usually amilin, these are people who are appointed by the caliph in collecting zakat. So they are appointed by the caliph in collecting the zakat from the people. So they would go house to house, and they were told and instructed by the caliph that you can't take their best wealth, and you can't and don't take the wealth which is considered low as well. Take the medial wealth from the people. Take the wealth which is average, so not too good, not too bad as well, and make sure that whatever they're giving after having calculated their zakat completely and fairly. So of course, this category doesn't apply to us today because mu'allafati qulub. I mean, these are people. I'm sorry, amilin. These are people who were strictly appointed by the caliph, by the khalif of the time. No such khalif exists today. Thus, this category does not exist. Obviously, if there is a khalif, then yes, this category would exist, but that is not the case. The fourth category is mu'allafati qulub. So mu'allafati qulub are those whose hearts are to be reconciled. So people who had accepted Islam in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Islam had not yet it permeated their hearts. They didn't have complete conviction. So the Prophet ﷺ would give them money. The Prophet of Allah would give them money so that their iman becomes strong, their iman becomes consolidated. And once it becomes consolidated, then they would not receive zakat anymore. One such person was Hakim bin Hizam, radiallahu anh. He was from the Mu'allafati Qulub. He was from the Quraysh. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gave him until his heart became consolidated and drawn to Islam, and Islam became rasikh. Islam became cemented in his heart. So mu'allafat qulub, this is the fourth category. So we have fuqara, masakin, amilin, third, and mu'allafat qulub is the fourth. Wa fir riqab, and to free those in bondage. So those who are slaves, and of course, this category too does not exist anymore. Wa fir riqab, those who are in bondage, those who are slaves. So we can give them zakat so that they can free themselves. And one of the things that the Prophet ﷺ always wanted to do was to free all of the slaves. Rasulullah ﷺ had this ardent desire to free every single slave in the peninsula. And this is why whenever the Prophet ﷺ, he would receive any slave, he would immediately free him. We would not take that person as a slave, and that person would live with the Prophet ﷺ of his own volition. And this was the case with Zayd bin Haritha radiallahu anh, that of his own volition he lived with the Prophet ﷺ and he served the Prophet ﷺ. And this is even after his own parents came to secure his release, but he opted to stay with Rasulullah ﷺ. So just imagine what kind of relationship he must have had with the Prophet of Allah to forego living with his own father and his own family. He decided to stay with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Continuing on, wal gharimin, and those who are debt ridden. So those who are in debt, debt ridden, they too are recipients of zakat, meaning that their debts are more than their assets and money. So for example, if somebody has $5,000 but he's in debt $20,000, then he's in negative 15, right? He's in negative 15. So such a person, it's permissible to give such a person who is in debt zakat. Wa fi sabilillah, and for the cause of Allah. Wa fi sabilillah, and for the cause of Allah. Now, for the cause of Allah, this is very general. The scholars have discussed what does it mean by the cause of Allah, wa fi sabilillah. So some scholars have said that it is strictly to those, it is given to soldiers who are fighting in the path of Allah. Fi sabilillah also means those who are searching for knowledge. They don't have means, they don't have access to money at home, and they're in search of knowledge, they're in the pursuit of knowledge. So they too are considered fi sabilillah, meaning for the cause of Allah, in the path of Allah. And finally, wabni sabil, and to the wayfarer, to the traveler, because a traveler, he doesn't have access to his money. In those days, that this was the situation. I mean, nowadays, I'm not sure if this really applies, because with modern day technology and electronics, we have access to our funds anywhere we go in the world. But in those days, the wayfarer, he didn't have access to his money. And because he didn't have access to his money, sometimes something would come up and he would run out of money. So there was no way that he could make money. So it would be permissible uh, for somebody to give that person zakat. He would be a legitimate and bona fide recipient of zakat. Faridatan min Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the verse by saying that Faridatan min Allah, Wallahu alimun hakim. This is the obligation from Allah, and Allah is all knowing and all wise. In the verse after that, which is also quite interesting, there are those, and this is verse number 61. "Minhum alladhina yu'dhuna an-nabi." Now, as to the hypocrites amongst them are those who seek to hurt the Prophet ﷺ by their words. And what do they say? وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ. They say he is just an ear. What does this mean? Meaning that he's listening to everybody's problems, that he's attentive to the needs of of the people. And I would say that, for those who are involved in psychology and psychiatry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them. This is essentially what they're doing, and even physicians, that they're listening to the problems. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is a sunnah, to listen to problems that people have. So and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying over here, praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمِنْهُمُ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيَّ وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَيُؤْمِنُ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَرَحْمَةُ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. As to the hypocrites amongst them are those who seek to hurt the Prophet ﷺ by their words, because they say he's just an ear, meaning that he's just listening to people's problems all day. He's giving people an attentive ear. Say to them, his ear is of goodness for you. This is a good thing, meaning that this is a sunnah, this is a very positive thing. So again, those who are listening to other people's problems, psychologists and psychiatrists, physicians who are listening to patients' problems, inshallah, they will be rewarded. This is a reward. This is a reward to them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, say to them, his is an ear of goodness for you. Why? He believes in Allah and has faith in the believers. And verily he is a mercy to those who believe amongst you. As to those who hurt Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for them there is a most painful torment awaiting in the hereafter. So again, this is a sunnah that we should try to adhere to, that sometimes we need to lend an attentive ear. We need to lend an attentive ear. We need to listen to the problems of people who are in our communities, our families, the Muslims at large. Sympathize with them. Try to do something to help them out, inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq and understanding, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our pious worships in the month of Ramadan. Continuously we should make dua. One such dua that we should make is Allahumma ij'alni, what is that dua? Allahumma ij'alni walija. Allahumma ij'alni walija, which means that, oh Allah, walija means someone who is constantly going in and out of the court of Allah. So walija, it means someone who's constantly going in and out of the house. So in this context, when we use it in the context when we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it means that somebody who is going constantly in and out from the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that there's a relationship between that person and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a dua that we should often ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It should be memorized. Allahumma ij'alni walija, that, oh Allah, make me a walija, somebody who is constantly going in and out of your court, who has a relationship with you. And also, Allahumma ij'alni zulfa wa husna ma'ab, that, oh Allah, make me a close confidant, a close friend, wa husna ma'ab, and make me from someone who has a good abode with you. So these are just du'as that are mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and these du'as have a very profound and amazing effect. So these du'as should be memorized, especially in the month of Ramadan. If we look at if you look at the 13-line Quran, which is printed in South Africa. So this Quran right here, this is not the Uthmani script, but this Quran is, I believe it is available online. So towards the end, there are du'as over here. These are all du'as that are taken from Quran and Hadith. So these du'as should be memorized, and we should go over the translations of these du'as so we at least know what is being asked. Alhamdulillah, Ramadan is the opportunity to read a little bit more extra, inshallah. So go over these du'as, go over the translation, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by using these du'as, by supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these du'as, inshallah. And by these du'as, they're very comprehensive. These were the du'as that the Prophet ﷺ used to supplicate with. And again, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, this is part and parcel of our life, and this will be a cause for our salvation. Okay, do we have any questions today before I get into my own question? So I'll wait. So while I'm talking, anyone can write. So, okay, somebody asked me, can you provide the history of Abu Hurairah's agnomen, kunya? So agnomen is kunya. Why was he called Abu Hurairah? His real name was Abdurrahman bin Sakhr. Abu Hurairah's name was Abdurrahman bin Sakhr. So Abu Hurairah, can you provide the history of Abu Hurairah's agnomen with cats? Was he an avid cat lover? So in Tirmidhi has recorded a hadith which explains the reason. And this hadith is narrated by Abdullah bin Rafi', rahimahullah. He says that I asked Abu Hurairah, he was a student of Abu Hurairah. So he said, I asked Abu Hurairah, why were you given the agnomen, the kunya of Abu Hurairah, laqab of Abu Hurairah? So he said that I used to tend the sheep of my people, and I had a small kitten which I would place on a tree at night, and during the day I would play with it. So they named me Abu Hurairah, father of the kitten. So this hadith is declared sound by Imam Tirmidhi, but this was the direct cause of Abu Hurairah's name, his laqab, his kunya, his agnomen. Otherwise, his name was Abdurrahman bin Sakhr, but he became famous with his agnomen, his laqab, Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh. And I also received another question. Is Yunus alayhi salam attributed to his father or mother? So the question is that I have heard the historians say that Yunus alayhi salam, like Isa, had been attributed to his mother, but I read in Sahih Bukhari wherein mention is made that he is attributed to his father. So certain historians, they were of the opinion, his name is Yunus bin Matta. So certain historians were of the opinion that Matta was the name of Sayyiduna Yunus's mother. And due to the narration, which is recorded in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, this view is declared as incorrect. And one of the scholars of Hadith, Ibn Hajar Asqalani, this Hadith refutes those who claim that Matta was his mother's name. Rather, Matta was his father's name, and this is what is most authentic. But this brings me to another issue, that is a child always going to be attributed to the father? And this is another discussion in of itself. Some people, they say that Islam is patriarchal, and it's not matriarchal, but there's nothing really to suggest that in the Quran and in the Hadith where a person has to be attributed to the father at all times. We have Isa alayhi salam, who is attributed who was attributed to his mother. We have quite a number of Sahaba and Tabi'een as well who were attributed to their mother. So it's not entirely patriarchal. It's not from the wajibat, not from the fard that a person has to be attributed to the father at all times. A person could be attributed to the mother as well. Okay, Dr. Seb is asking, what is the best dua to make for non-Muslims? Anything for hidayat, for guidance, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the best in this world as long as they are non-Muslim. And the most important dua that we can make for them is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them all of the goodness in this world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides them towards Islam, towards Allah, towards the finality of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood. This is the best dua that a person can make. I mean, there are many non-Muslims. Sometimes it's very difficult for us to reconcile. There are many non-Muslims who are very decent people, and yeah, I mean, this is a theological issue as well. That there are many non-Muslims who are very decent people, and uh, possibly, I mean, not even possibly, but it's a fact that they're better than so many Muslims when it comes to their social dealings and their conduct, and how they conduct business. I mean, they're such amazing people. They're so ethical and everything. So it is a theological issue that if this non-Muslim never associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then and he did not believe the finality of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because for whatever reason he never received a convincing message, then there is hope for his salvation. So there is hope for his salvation as long as he has not ascribed partners with Allah. I mean, this is the most important thing, that a person cannot ascribe partners with Allah, because that is the biggest crime a person can do. So, inshallah, there are such people like that living in this world who, they're good people, they're decent folk, uh, they're better than certain Muslims in many ways, in many aspects. And yes, it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives them because they didn't associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't commit any kind of shirk, and they didn't receive a convincing message about Islam, because Muslims, they were probably lacking in really conveying something really authentic and something really that would convince them to think and ponder. I mean, it's our you know we it's our deficiencies as well, where Muslims throughout the world, they're not entirely, alhamdulillah, many Muslims are, but unfortunately, people look at the minority, and whenever something bad comes up, and it's a Muslim it's a minority from amongst the Muslims that are doing it. People forget all of the good that Muslims have done throughout history, throughout the centuries, and they just look at the bad. I mean, we still have non-Muslims today who are still complaining that why did the Turks take over Hagia Sophia, but they failed to see that the Christians did that with Masjid Qurtuba. I mean, there's a lot of double standards in play, and it's all because I think we need to do a better job in interacting with non-Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward some of our community members. MashaAllah, they make a very good attempt in trying to bridge this gap, by going to the churches and by showing them that the Muslims, they do care, and we want to participate with people who are minorities and who are weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the members of our community. Yeah, we definitely need to do more as Muslims. And this was one of the great thinkers of Islam, by the name of Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi. When he passed away in India, Salatul Ghaib, Salat Absentia, was offered for him in Mecca and Medina. He was master in the Arabic language. He was an amazing linguist, grammarian. His Arabic was possibly way better than Arabs themselves, and his books are a testament to this fact. So he would say that one of the causes for the downfall of the Muslims is they never did their job when it came to interacting with non-Muslims, and they lived a very insulated life. And as Muslims, we can't be doing that. We can't be living insulated lives where we just mind our own business and we just mind our own, and we don't care about anyone else. Alhamdulillah, this is another thing that alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward our community, where they have a food bank in place, and it caters to both Muslims and non-Muslims. I wish more people knew about it, especially non-Muslims. And it becomes it's mentioned in the news and stuff, because it really shows that Muslims, they want to be part of the community at large. They don't want to live insulated lives. I mean, there was a shout out in New Jersey to a charitable organization, Smile, where the governor gave them a shout out for, and this is a Muslim charitable organization where they were donating, 500 meals for per day to both Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And things like this really help our cause, considering that we are a minority in this country, and we have to do our part in representing correct Islam. Dr. Seb, the Quran always talks about gardens beneath which rivers. So what does this mean? It's talking about paradise. It's talking about paradise. And one of the things that we always find pleasure in is gardens and water. I mean, water is really peaceful. And, if we really think about it, um, we find a lot of joy when there's flowers and there's beautiful trees, nice blue sky. There's a river running there, or a small stream running there. It's just very calming. It's soothing, and this is what Jannah is going to be about. It's calming. It's soothing. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Jannah in this way, because that was always the case, that for people throughout the ages, that they loved to have lush gardens and rivers through these gardens, just flowing with trees, with trees around, where they could just enjoy this calming effect. So this is what it's talking about. It's just to make us understand. Obviously, Jannah cannot be imagined, because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this hadith, this is just one aspect where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to make us understand what is waiting for us in paradise. So Jannah, the Prophet ﷺ described, ma la aynun ra'at. It's something the eyes have never seen. Ma la udhunun sami'at. It's nothing that the ears have heard. Wala khatar ala qalbi bashar. And it's something that we cannot even imagine. So, but this is just an idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran. Any other questions before we break for tonight? No? No questions? It's probably a good thing, inshallah, because Ramadan is all about ibadah. Oh, yes, we do have a question. Why does Surah Tawbah not begin with Bismillah? Okay, that's a good question, actually. So when Uthman radiallahu anh, many people think that, because it's to do with jihad and stuff, it doesn't have Bismillah, and Bismillah is all about mercy. And this is a misconception, actually. So with Surah Tawbah, when Uthman radiallahu anh was compiling the Mus'haf, they never found Bismillah at the beginning of Surah Tawbah. And this is mentioned in Hadith as well, that Surah Tawbah, although it is a surah, but none of the Sahaba, they had recorded Bismillah at the beginning of this surah. Hence, when they wrote the Mus'haf, when they transcribed the Mus'haf, they wrote it without Bismillah at the beginning of Surah Tawbah. And many Sahaba, they were of the opinion that because the context is kind of the same as Surah Anfal, this is another reason. So they didn't really know if it was a separate surah altogether, or it was part of Surah Anfal. So it's not to do with the surah is all about battle and jihad and waging war and all that, but rather it's just when they were compiling the Quran, they never found Bismillah from any of the Sahaba. And the way they compiled the Quran was quite rigorous. They had a committee, and they made sure that every single verse was written in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and two people had to verify it. Two of the Sahaba, they had to verify it. And this was in the time of, the first was in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and the second was in the time of Uthman radiallahu anh. And of course, before Abu Bakr and Uthman radiallahu anh, there was the Quran was entirely transcribed by the Prophet ﷺ to various Sahaba. It was dictated, and they wrote it down, so it was transcribed. So when they compiled it into one book, this was done in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, they made sure that every single verse was written while the Prophet was alive, and that two people could attest to it under testimony and by giving testimony. Right? So, as I said, they never found Bismillah at the beginning of Surah Anfal. And many Sahaba, they were of the opinion that the content and the subject matter was similar to Surah Anfal. Thus, Surah Tawbah is an entirely, it could be part of Surah Anfal, or it could be an entirely separate surah altogether. Majority opinion was that it was a separate surah, but again, they did not find Bismillah at the beginning of it when they were recording the Quran. Any other questions before we relax for tonight and get up for suhoor? It's always good. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا. It's always good to rest up, even though we have to get up for suhoor in probably 2-3 hours. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the night for rest. And even if it's 2 hours rest, it's still rest. I mean, it still has a very good impact. So uh, this is the night is made for rest, so we should rest during the night, even if it's for 1 hour. Try to get up early, do suhoor, read some tahajjud, and read salah, and then do whatever you need to do after that. So, any other questions before we break for tonight? I'll wait for 10 seconds. Okay. All right. So, I'm assuming no questions, inshallah. If there are, you can ask tomorrow. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq and understanding. Make dua for the entire ummah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our pious acts of devotion. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.